Okay. We'll say a prayer for you. Oh, good. Good afternoon, everyone. We will now start the work session. But first, I will refer to Councilwoman Allman.
If we could all please stand for a moment of silence for School Resource Officer Joe Comegna. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay. First, I'd like to apologize to everyone for us being a little late. We had some business we had to tend to, and I will start with page 1, Keith Dorsey.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the County Council. The first item is a request for approval to supplement the current year capital budget, the FY 2018-19 capital budget, by adding an additional $170.2 million. Last week, the citizens of Baltimore County voted and approved referendum items that normally would be put in place with the upcoming fiscal year. But this is a request to accelerate some of those that funding that was voted on last week. The acceleration would be $10 million for roadway resurfacing, where we last couple of years we've tried to target at the $20 million level. We have already approved in the current year's budget $10.5 million for roadway resurfacing. In terms of refuge disposal, a request for accelerating $7.2 million. Currently there's roughly $700,000, so this would take the total to 7.9. The request there is to start building an additional cell at the Eastern Sanitary Landfill. This would be cell number 12. Because of an acceleration of some of the trash going into the landfill, we thought it would be good to begin that process. We are, as each area of the cell of the landfill gets filled up, then we start several years in advance to begin to build the next one, and so that's what this request is. There's a request for accelerating the funds of roughly $15.7 million in terms of replacing the 911 communication system. That's an effort that's there because the whole state, we're moving toward next-gen 911 systems. Because of the timing, if we do not make an adjustment in terms of accelerating, we would end up having to wait a whole extra year. We want to try to finish up by November of 2020, but in terms of to finalize that work, you have to do sort of testing of your system when all of the foliage is out on the trees. So in order to meet that time period of spring and summer of 2020, we need to get started on that next build-out this coming January. So we're requesting that funds be put out there so we can accelerate the replacement of the 911 communications systems, and we would be able to test it in a time adequate for getting the work done by the fall of 2020. Otherwise, we'd have to wait until the foliage is all out again, and that would cause a whole nother year delay. So that's one item. And then the final large area is in terms of schools. We're requesting the acceleration of $137.4 million to provide for $53.2 million in the northeast area for middle school, both in terms of the Nottingham Middle School and the Pine Grove Middle School addition. There is a request for, the request includes new construction of another $53.2 million in the southeast area of the county. That would be for replacement of Dundalk, Berkshire, and Colgate elementary schools. And then the fourth area is, the third area is in the northeast in terms of new construction with the Ridge Road site for Ridge Road, new elementary school. And the fourth and final area regarding the schools is $8 million for the additions and new construction at Chadwick Elementary School in the on the southwest side of the county. So as I said, those elements, 10 for highways, street resurfacing, 7.2 for refuse disposal, 15.7 for general government in placing the 911 communication system, and 137.4 for the schools, totals $170.2 million that we're asking that we accelerate those, what has been approved by voters at the referendum, but we, in terms of getting an early start on it, accelerating it into this current capital budget year.
Thank you. Councilwoman Bev?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Dorsey, can we just, I let you get ahead of yourself. Can we talk a little bit about the landfill? The executive summary states that the Eastern Landfill, the Eastern Sanitary Landfill Cell 10 was to be filled this fall, and that the Bureau of Solid Waste was to begin landfilling until 11, which is was scheduled for October, and it didn't meet that deadline. Then it fell behind schedule to October 24th, and then the next schedule was for November the 5th. Has that cell 10 been filled?
I don't know if it's been filled as of this date.
Pardon me?
I don't know whether it has been filled as of this date.
Well, I guess that leads to my next question. Where has all that waste been waiting? Where has that been stored?
I'm not clear I understand the question.
Well, I don't know. I'm looking at this and I'm wondering, I've been struggling on the east side with a horrendous smell that, you know, says it was coming from the reclamation center, which doesn't actually take any waste, it takes rubble. And we've been spending a lot of time and energy out there, and I'm just wondering, can any of that smell be contributed to our eastern landfill and not the reclamation center?
I don't have an answer for that, Councilman. I don't know whether Mr.
Anybody know?
Mr.
Walsh?
Walsh is here. Maybe he will.
Right. So there's ongoing work at that landfill and the my folks are involved. Right. To try to minimize that as much as possible. As far as the cell is concerned, the new cell, which is just completed, so there's a bottom layer which we're working on now, but the rain is really hurting us. Right. So in the meantime, we're still working off of the existing face of the landfill, so there's been no impact from a resident or anybody else. Okay, that's what I'm asking. Yeah, okay. Cell just curious.
Okay.
Councilman Quirk?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question as far as some of these capital budgets, specifically the schools. This isn't going to change any of the time schedules as far as estimated dates of completion, right? I mean, they're all
No.
still on schedule for wait.
Yes, they're still on schedule.
Okay.
As we had.
Any other questions? All right, Mr. Dorsey, I guess we'll move right along to page 34, dealing with some fiscal matters, contract with Tito Contractors.
Yes. This is a contract with Tito Contractors for pickleball courts to be painted three at three locations, those locations being the Cockeysville Powell Center, the Jacksonville Community Center, and the Honeygo Regional Park. It's my understanding that this is a new phenomenon that many people are excited about in terms of pickleball. Sort of combines tennis and badminton and ping pong together. And so out of response to requests that has come up from citizens, the request is for $45,000 to paint 3 pickleball courts per gymnasium at 3 different sites. So that's 9 courts for $45,000.
Councilman Quirk?
And I've been copied a lot on some pickleball enthusiasts in southwest Baltimore County. Do we have any plans to do some pickleball courts in the southwest?
This is all we receive as a recommendation from the Rec and Parks Council. I'm not familiar what other requests they have. This is the 3 that they brought forward.
I would just say maybe when you have a chance to talk to Director Williams, I know he gets a frequent amount of emails from people in the Southwest specific to this topic, because I'm always copying in on them. So I'm a little surprised to
Okay.
not see anything over in the Southwest. It just ask for your consideration. That's all.
Okay.
I was just pulling it up on the computer. I was saying if we had our screen here, we could just beam it over there so everybody know what we're talking about. What it appears to be is something that looks like a miniature tennis court, but you play it with a ball and a racket. It looks like you're the human being running around what is it? What is it called? The courts with the
Racquetball?
no, not racquetball, but the
Ping pong?
on table tennis,
Yeah, ping pong.
ping pong. It's like you're running around a ping pong table trying to hit the ball over the racket, over the net. That's what it looks like. Did you?
Question. So, Mr. Dorsey, when would these improvements actually be done? The spring, I guess, would you say?
Yeah, I'd have to double check. Let's see. I know we have the note that in terms of it takes 14 days to give them notice to after notice to proceed. I don't foresee any delay, but I'd have to, if you want a specific time, I'd have to check on that, on those
Okay.
particular dates.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay. Moving right along to page 36, Mason Tillman Associates.
The county has a MBE plan, MBEWB plan that is has an executive order to it and specific goals that are there. That was established after a study that was done back in covering the period in 2004. Final issuance, I think it was back in 2008. And that helps establish what is what would be the targets for any jurisdiction based on, one, is there elements of discrimination? Does it continue in impact? And so every so often, a jurisdiction that has an MVEWB plan needs to go back out and check to see whether those issues that may have been prevalent in the past still exist. After each time you have one of these kind of studies, you set up some action plans of whether how to improve the situation. So it's now come to a point where the county needs to go back out to reestablish are those conditions still prevalent, whether in fact the goals need to be changed. The goals are based on the number of willing and available contractors in your area. And so if that number has gone up, then even though you may meet your previous target, that target may have fallen behind what was previously, currently to be recognized as interested and available potential candidates. So we are proposing a contract to do another disparity study in terms of looking at our procurement practices, as well as what is perception of being people willing and able to do business with the county. This proposal is a contract for $249,994. It was competitively bid, but Mason Tillman, who did the study last time, was also selected to do the repeat study this time. And so this is a contract that will go on for better part of, for over a year, I guess, or just around a year's time. And we should be having the results around this time next year.
Any questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, I have one question, if
Yes.
I could. How is the county doing as far as practice compared to its participation goals?
It is meeting those goals in terms of, for the past couple of years, we were hovering around the 15% level. I believe now this past year, double check, I think we've gotten closer to the 20% level. The way the process works is we're looking at each contract and trying to determine what is the level that should be set for that particular contract. Generally, it's 15% participation. Sometimes it's less because of the particular area. Sometimes it's more because there is more opportunity in terms of that. And so we've been, for the last several years, hovering around that 15%. This past year, I believe we were closer to the 20% level.
When was it more? When did we have more than 15 or 20%?
Well, let's say in terms of if you were doing a contract with building services, custodial services, those kind of things, you can expect to have more. There have been times when we know of a particular industry, and this is what my staff does. If it could be construction, it could be a construction project, but they need a call center, okay? Usually you will find that we can get more higher level if you're trying to do a call center as a component of a contract. There are various ones, and so what they're doing, they're checking for each contract, what is the most you can expect that could be there. So it leans toward that direction, toward expanding rather than contracting. Unless there's a reason to go below 15, usually they would not go below 15.
Okay. Any additional questions? Hearing none, moving to the fourth, the amendment that was added, the American Traffic Solutions.
Okay. American Traffic Solution, which has also been doing business as Vera Mobility. This is for us to begin to pick up renewing a contract that was going to run out shortly in terms of both our red light and speed camera enforcement system. We have had over the time since this, the current contract was put in place, some changes in the state law that, for speed cameras specifically, that eliminated us being able to do payments per citation in terms of the fee that we're charged to one that's based on per camera. We made a slight modification in the contract last year, but as we renew the new contract, it is setting a price per camera for speed camera and still but a per citation for red light violations. The prices that we are looking at are coming in better than our current contract, and we believe we have consistent or perhaps slightly improved opportunities for service. It was an action, as I said, this is the vendor we went with was both in terms of best price and service, and that's what, in terms of that selection.
Councilman Quirk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple questions. What are the bottom line net revenues currently to the speed camera program right now?
I haven't checked recently. In the past couple of years, it was at $6 to $6.5 million. It dropped off at the in FY18 as we switched over back to having to pay a per camera provision. With a per camera, it doesn't give the kind of incentive for the contractor to make sure they're keeping equipment running, keeping it up. They're going to get the same amount. And so to that extent, we may have suffered in terms of losing, as much as $2 million in terms of that drop-off. In this new contract, what we have done, we've included in there some incentives that in terms of if a camera is not working fully and it has some faults in it, or we're getting a lower quality of pictures that we have to then kick out, that there are penalties. There are, I forget the operative word, but there are penalties that go in place if their cameras are not up and running adequately, if they're not producing a level of quality of pictures consistently, that they face penalties. That was the teeth we did not have in the current contract.
In the current contract, most of these net revenues, whether it's $4 million or $6 million, is going right toward police body cameras?
Yes, in terms of, it's all directed in terms of the speed camera to a program in the police department that pays for their body-worn camera. There is one small portion of it, I think, that covers for some forensic staff over there that work over in the police department. But it is, yes, all geared toward the police department.
And then this contract that's under consideration, as far as direction of the net revenues continues?
It would remain the same. And the police department, of course, what we do in terms of budget and finance, we're collectors. We know how to get the monies collected, efficiently and everything. But it's the police department who make the determination where the cameras are being located, when they get moved, and so forth. Because it's still that public safety component of why the program is there. And so, yes, that's why then the funds that come from it are going toward a public safety purpose, the body-worn cameras being the largest user of it.
And I would respectfully submit that, at least in my district, general election's now over, but one of the number one things I heard, like nonstop from basically everyone, is what can we do to slow down traffic in my neighborhoods? And so, of course, a red light or speed camera enforcement program, as you guys help with, close to Westtown, we had a big problem, kids walking across, trying to get to school, cars not slowing down, so it was a welcome addition to the community. But to me, it almost logically, at least the way I view it, is revenues coming off this program, to me, would help to farther continue to slow down traffic. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm all in favor of the police body cameras and helping our police, and I know revenue's tight. But what I hear from citizens time and time again is you've got to slow down this traffic in my neighborhood. I want more traffic calming. I want I want to show you your speed, those big signs we always have trouble funding. They want more of those. They want traffic to slow down everywhere in every neighborhood. So to me, from a contract standpoint, it makes sense to really try to direct more of that revenue towards specifically what this whole program's about, which is slowing down traffic.
We have the component in the, also in our tech fund and equipment financing, where we do provide for some of those items that you just mentioned, in terms of the big signs to show people, and we have the funds to be able to do those things. It was just that we put the funding for the body-worn camera, because at the point when we initiated, they pretty much matched up in terms of funds that were coming in and the funds that were going to be needed. But we do have that, those funds, those ticket monies could be used for any other things, but we do have set aside monies in our tech fund to pay for additional readers, as well as for those mobile signs that you're describing. There are options to do other things in terms of on the capital side, in terms of speed calming and the like, but those are items that we try to incorporate in the budget. It may not just be tied specifically to this source of revenue.
Well, I would just like to see some more crosswalks. I'm not asking for much. Councilman Marks?
Thank you. I've been chomping at the bit to get in here. We're flashing back to August of 2017 when we considered legislation to require a portion of the speed camera money to be used for those digital signs, not the mobile units. The mobile units are moved around throughout the county. There's a waiting list. But the permanent digital signs that are powered by solar energy that remind motorists to slow down. And there are corridors in this county you cannot put speed bumps on. Register Avenue's a principal one that Councilwoman Bevins and I share. And, the cost quoted to me was several $1,000s, which is a drop in the bucket from the revenue we're getting here. And it just seems to me that, you have a new county executive who said he wanted to create a Department of Transportation. The voters just approved Question F, which expands the mission of the Department of Public Works. And it seems to me that we should be thinking very comprehensively about this and maybe either consulting with the new county executive or waiting until we can integrate safety measures like that into the program. What do you think about that, Mr. Dorsey?
Well, as I said, it wouldn't matter what you're describing right now as source of funding. If it's agreed that the concept is correct, then there is the ability to address those needs, whether we fund it out of the special fund here in the police department, whether we do it through the tech fund in terms of other location in the budget, or whether we do it in terms of equipment financing. I think the point you're making is you would like to see those elements added and make it available. And so one of the processes we would address with the county executive, the new county executive coming in, if there is that commitment to move there, where we would find the money. And so it's not so much tied to the revenue source as what you're going to do in terms of overall.
But don't you think that it would be better for the new administration to be considering all these issues rather than the administration that's on its way out the door?
I was referring to the new administration. When I said the administration.
Right, but the contract's before us for a vote before the new administration takes office.
Well, in terms of the issue is, the problem is this contract, the existing one, is coming to an end, and we need to have time to have it approved and begin to make the transition so that this can be effective January 1st and be put in place. And so there is a need for the contract. What you do with the money is a different question, but the need for the contract is still there.
So if the contract's not approved, then there's no speed cameras on at the beginning of the year.
There would be a gap period.
There'd be a gap. Okay.
Councilwoman Bevins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have two questions. I have a comment and a question. Mr. Dorsey, we were at $6.5 million and we went down $2 million. Do you accredit any of that to people just slowing down?
This is what I want to check. As I said, it was my last time glancing, and it looked like it was off by that amount. I would want to see what the number is, but that is exactly the question I asked of my staff. I said, find out what it is. Was it because people are actually slowing down? in which case that's a good thing,
Yeah.
but it creates a budget difficulty? Or was it because of the differences in terms of how the cameras were charged?
Well, for me, I'd like to think people are slowing down
Okay.
instead of ticketing them. Second, do you have a list of the 75 sites?
We can make it available to you.
Okay, thank you.
It may, in fact, be already on the website, but I'll
Oh, is it?
double check. It
Okay.
was, we were having them out on the website at one time,
Of the lights as well?
of the lights.
Uh-huh. I know where the
Oh.
school, but you're talking about the cameras for the red lights as well that I'm not aware of.
For the, you said the cameras for the what lights?
The lights, the red lights?
Oh, the red lights.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if that's listed, but we can make that available to you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Quirk?
Because I don't want to get a ticket.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to this gap that you were talking about, first of all, the contract expires January what, of
The
2019?
contract ends, I think it expires toward, the existing one toward the end of January.
Is there an automatic minimum renewal feature in the contract, or like,
Not that I'm aware of, but as I said, it's a better pricing scheme than what we have right now. And so, what we do with the money is a different question of whether this is a good contract for moving forward.
right, and say, for example, if the council wanted to put, say we want 50% go to only, slowing down traffic calming, things that our constituents, believe me, ask us every single day. How easy would it to be to change that part of the contract to say, okay, we're going to put half of it toward, the
It has
police?
nothing to do with the contract. It's one of the decisions of budgetarily, where do you put the monies? The contractor doesn't care what we do with the
No,
money.
I know that, but we could always restrict it. We could say half of it goes to traffic calming, half of it goes to police body cameras, or,
Okay, so then the question would be, what do you do with the other half of the body cameras?
right, general revenues? Like
Mhm.
that, like the answer everybody else gives, magical
so
general
it's-
revenues to build our three high schools
Right,
too.
so that's why I'm saying, it really isn't a question in terms of this approving this contract. The point that Councilman Marks was raising is that in terms of discussing with the incoming administration, where resources could be used and how we'll fund it, but it's not really so much the subject of this contract.
Councilman Crandall?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Dorsey. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I can appreciate that the contract is up in January, and from a fiscal standpoint and from a public safety standpoint, we don't want a gap. I do understand that. But can you clear up for me, because I'm seeing that this is not just an extension of the contract with a new vendor. This is a pretty big expansion of the program. Am I correct in that?
No. In terms of right now, in terms of there's no plans immediately for expansion, this is what is going on right now.
Okay, so this is not new. None of the new contract that's in here has anything to do with new red light cameras or new camera locations, which are primarily at our schools.
No, in terms of for several years ago, when we did the last contract renewal, we agreed that we would retain at the level of 36 cameras, in terms of speed cameras being displayed every day. And as you may read in the background on the auditor's notes, that's where we still are. And in terms of so there's no immediate plan to change from that. We have more sites. We go around, we got like 72 sites where we have prepared the pads so that those cameras can be rotated, but no more than 36 are put out in any given day. And so it's not an expansion in terms of that.
Okay, thank you.
Question for Mr. Field. In 2011, when we were considering speed camera legislation, I think I asked the same question. Can the county council legislate that a portion of the revenues go for certain capital improvements, such as digital signs, traffic calmings, things like that? Can we legislate that? I recall at the time the opinion was that we could not.
Did I write something back then?
It was a conversation on the night of the vote, I think. Can we
We can
specifically
legislate
require in statute that the revenue go toward capital projects?
It's unprecedented.
Why is that?
Because typically the budget comes from the executive.
And we can only delete from the budget.
Pardon me?
And we can only delete from the budget, we can't condition or
Yeah,
delete.
so, I mean, I'm trying to think of another circumstance where we've done something like this, and directed money to a specific place. I mean, you did it with the, what was it, the tourism money
Hotel
that we
tax.
did a while ago. Pardon me?
Didn't
Yeah,
we do that with the
hotel
hotel?
tax?
I don't understand the difference.
Yeah, so, I mean,
It would
I-
seem to me, my non-legal view, that the county council, we actually make the policy. And if we say we want 50% as revenue to go toward traffic calming, that we should be able to do that. Am I mistaken there?
that's probably, I mean, there's some precedent for it, but I mean, just,
Someone would need to challenge it.
pardon me?
Someone would need to challenge it, right?
Well,
Administration?
yeah, the question, I don't know who would, but, yeah.
Okay,
Let me, I'll get back to you. I mean,
okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Yes, Councilman Quirk?
Just a question to, I don't know, maybe Mr. Field too, just so I understand it. Like, say, for example, we still evaluate this contract. Can we renew this contract month to month as the transition team's like looking at the big picture? Or, like, do we have a provision to renew this contract month to month?
We can terminate
Like,
it.
I don't know who would answer that.
What was
Because
the
I don't know
question?
if this contract
I think we can terminate it.
in other words,
Well-
the current contract, say it expires January of 19, and we do nothing to it, are we able to say, okay, on a month-to-month basis?
No,
we're
it's not
gonna-
like a lease. I mean, it's,
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
a-
you would have an
the
issue. with-
contracts are done. I mean, they typically have renewal periods, and
Right.
once we've,
But
I
there's
mean,
no
I'm not sure what
renewal,
this one is. Once you're
Yeah.
done with the renewal period, it's not like you can keep renewing it.
but does this
The
contract
bid,
has
the
no
bid that
renewal?
was put in was based on an assumption about an initial term and renewal terms. And so if you're saying you've changed it now to they're working on a month by month,
Yeah.
they would have to first put up the investment to bring in cameras. And they would be unwilling, if they only know this contract is only good for 1 month, why would I put out the money for buying these new cameras? Because you're changing vendors. Why would I put out the money for buying these new cameras if I don't know that this is going to last more
Yeah,
than a
I
period
don't
of
mean
time?
this current one, I mean looking backward at the one we have today. In the contract itself, is there any renewal provision? Say if it expires January of 19, but do we have any provision that allows us to renew if we want to?
Typically, I mean, I haven't looked at this. They're asking about renewing the contract that's
That
expiring now.
exists today, right?
I assume
Not-
that
not
what
a-
happened is, I haven't looked at it, but that it had several one-year renewals, which is typical for us, but there's no ability to keep coming back every month and keep renewing these
Right,
contracts
right,
like
but
that. I
maybe,
mean,
maybe a yearly one could be built, and maybe not.
But
Maybe,
it-
maybe
in other words, I assume that it's already done. It's with the current, the problem before you quite obviously is this. Where we are now is that I believe that the current contract that we have has probably been through its initial terms and all of its renewals. Is that correct?
I would have to double check, but I believe that to
Right,
be the
it's probably
case.
through all of its renewals. And so now the administration is bringing you another contract with a different contractor. I don't remember exactly the term. The question before you was only whether or not you're going to approve this contract. There is a secondary question about whether or not you can direct the money, and there's a little bit of a precedent for it here. We have some thoughts about that. But what Mr. Dorsey, I believe, is saying is that if you don't, notwithstanding whatever you would like to see happen with the money, if your solution is to delay the current contract, it will mean, I believe, that we don't have, that we'll go through a period where we don't have functioning speed camera or red light cameras. Is that
Yes.
correct? Right, that's the danger in trying to make the policy point by holding up this contract. I've never seen a commodities or service contract where there's month-to-month renewals because it doesn't really work that well.
I do have another question. This is, I know we're getting late in the hour here, but this is, I guess, a legal question and maybe a philosophical one. As I understand it, the reason we changed all the contracts is because the courts have ruled that you cannot pay the vendors a bounty on how many tickets they write.
Actually, they had ruled the other way. It was the General Assembly that specifically made it more clear in legislation in 15 or 16, I think.
Yes.
To just make it 100% clear that you couldn't pay on a per ticket basis. The law, the way it had originally been written, the language is a little bit ambiguous, and when it was litigated, I think it was in Montgomery County, the courts found that, that wasn't a violation of the law. So General Assembly came back, I think in 2015 or 16, and they changed it, and they very explicitly provided that you couldn't pay on a ticket-per-ticket basis, and they grandfathered in contracts for, I think, another 2 years.
Correct.
Before we were required to comply with it. So I think we came into compliance in 17,
Correct.
summer of 17. But
Well-
it was a very specific change made by the General Assembly.
Why do you think they decided that they didn't want to pay people on a per ticket basis?
Well, I think that, you remember there had been a lot of articles in the Sun, or maybe it was on
Well-
television.
There was some problems in other jurisdictions where they had things going on that made it appear that they were just looking at the money. You had in some jurisdictions where they had what was clearly an area for higher speeds. They reduced the speeds just to accommodate getting more tickets. You had in another jurisdiction, you had a group of people who were basically rubber stamping every ticket that was being issued and not really reviewing them for the accuracy or the quality of the picture. And so that made a lot of the members of the General Assembly upset because it was, cameras that were clearly, a car was seen sitting still and then being said that they were traveling at like 50 miles an hour or something like that. So there were clearly obvious problems in what was going on in jurisdictions. We have not had that problem in Baltimore County. We have not had anyone successfully challenge any of our issuances. So in terms of, that was the General Assembly responding to bad behavior in other jurisdictions. But
Okay.
we had to respond in the same manner.
So in other words, they were incentivized to write more tickets. They had a financial reward to make sure they wrote more tickets. So I guess my question then becomes to Mr. Fields, are we possibly doing the same thing if we are telling the police department you're going to be in charge of the cameras, and by the way, the money's going to come to you?
Well, the law always provided that pardon me? The law did always provide that police officers were supposed to be the final sign-off on this, so there was abuse across the board. I don't know that...
The new contract, it says that you're going to pay per camera.
Right.
So in terms of for the vendor, that's what I was pointing out earlier.
Oh, I'm not talking about the vendor. I'm talking about the police department. Every ticket that's written, you're telling me all the money goes back to the police. So aren't they now incentivized to see more tickets written?
Well, in terms of my experience with them, of what we've been seeing over the past couple of years, police and Baltimore County's police are very serious in terms of looking at that, and they are not rubber stamping. That was happening in other jurisdictions. That is not what's happening in Baltimore County, because otherwise people would be able to contest the ticket, take us to court, and win. That's not what's been happening. So police have been very conservative in terms of approving those citations.
I'm not talking about rubber stamping or being conservative. I'm talking about the idea that the General Assembly took up was, we don't want you to be incentivized by writing more tickets. Therefore, they can pay you by the camera and not by the ticket. But what you're telling me here in Baltimore County is the tickets that are written, whether it be 1, 2, or 100, all the money goes back to the police.
Remember, that's just that just happens here in Baltimore County. It doesn't necessarily work that way in other counties. We don't know what they're doing with their
Right,
money.
I don't
Ultimately,
care about other
it's just got to be a
counties.
certain level of trust, right? And so what Mr. Dorsey is saying is that we don't have any reason to believe that our officers are even making that connection that there'll be more money for the police department if we issue more tickets. So,
I mean, as I said, it's a matter of we could switch the monies and have it all go to the general fund, and then we'd have to take the money out of the general fund to pay for the same program. So it's nothing really there. It really isn't.
It's a good philosophical argument.
Okay.
Go ahead, Councilman Marks.
So-
Then we can move on, I
Yes.
guess, with a couple of more.
No, just one quick question. So a question to Mr. Petticord. So what would be the quickest timeline for passing legislation that mandated the use of these funds for capital improvements for the new council?
Well, you have a 45-day requirement for
Oh,
the-
now we do, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so, bill is introduced and a month later it can be passed.
So it's introduced first meeting in December with the inauguration, right?
Correct,
So it can be passed in mid-January.
right.
Okay.
Before this contract expires?
Councilman,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
close.
But it's close?
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Dorsey, I want to go back to my first question, because I found in the auditor's analysis in the addendum that we received just this morning. And on page 2 of the addendum, the first sentence, according to the request for the proposal, the county seeks to upgrade and expand its red light and speed camera enforcement program. So that line there, and then a couple other things that were discussed in the analysis, led to my assumption that what we are considering for Monday night session is an actual expansion of the program.
In terms of the upgrade for the program, in terms of what we believe the response that we get back from the vendor, the quality that we will get, that there will be an upgrade. In terms of the
I
expansion.
get that. I
Right.
get that.
Right.
What's
Okay.
the definition of expand in this context?
In terms of the definition of expansion, in terms of, is it possible to do something more than what we have? Yes, it's possible. Right now, there's been no plans to do any more than the 36 that we deploy every day.
Okay.
It was not written in the contract specifically, only 36 in the
Okay,
previous
and
contract.
there's something else that's causing little consternation, and that is that, I'll ask an unfair question, which is, are we really ready to sign this contract? Because it seems that there's a question as to how compensation will be met, because we don't know whether we're doing this one, according to, again, the analysis that we received, compensation will be based on either the number of citations paid or a monthly flat fee, depending on the type of camera. So we don't know which type of compensation model that we're heading into.
That's referring to the red light cameras are paid per citation. The speed cameras are paid per camera. So there's no ambiguity to that. This is a straightforward contract. I hope you would, recognize it as such. I know I've been getting a lot of calls that try to get it to be influenced differently, but I think this is a straightforward contract like we've had for multiple ones,
Okay.
and there's no ambiguity in there.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
can't help yourself. Go ahead,
I just
Councilman
can't help myself, I know. So the more I read, so in the analysis as well, it says a contractor will provide a critical site analysis for up to 270 potential red light speed cameras.
Sure.
Sites to assist the county in the final site selection. So is the contractor picking the site selections or the police?
No, that provision is a repeat from the existing contract, in that what we do is we get the contractor to help us in terms of going out and doing the testing of what's the traffic level flowing through various sites. And it's up to 270 in terms of if you're looking at all of the various public schools in the county as well as private schools in the county, that there are roughly 270 sites out there. And so in terms of, we have the contractor going out, testing for our original placement, but also in terms of follow-up. And they work with the police department, who has a unit that does that same examination. And so what this is saying is that the new contractor has to be available to do the same thing the current contractor is doing in terms of being able to look at any one of those sites. We have that in provision there, 270, but we only have 72 pads out there for rotational cameras. That's because the police department determined that in those specific cases, that the other one, there may not be a clear line sight in terms of for traffic coming. 2, the traffic may not be able to ever get 12 miles above the speed limit. There may be other factors that they consider in there. So, there's the option of being able to look at any of the 270, but again, that's still not changing what we're looking at as a daily deployment.
Well, I guess, I voted for the first one, and I voted for the expansion. I have one site in my district that I get beat up on all the time, and I will admit I've received the ticket there, and I know the thing is there. On Ebenezer Road, they take it from the left to the right, from the left to the right. Now it's totally gone. And they'll wait a couple weeks, and then they'll bring it back. People get used to it not being there. And so, I can't help but agree with some of my constituents that they feel like it's a trap. And I said, well, if you don't speed, you shouldn't feel like it's a trap. But is it really there for, when it's there, it seems to me that the tickets would start falling, and that's when the county decides to move it. But the county will say, no, the police determine that. And I always have a hard time with that because there is no place on Ebenezer Road to do radar. There is no pull-off. There is no shoulder. There is nowhere except to sit on the school property to try to get radar. And according to one of the neighbors who has a camera, there's never been a police officer there. So I'm wondering why they come back and why they leave and why they come back.
In terms of with the limitation of 36 sites and to be deployed, the police department do look at in terms of once the camera starts having a drop in the number of citation, there are other communities that's looking to try to have a camera. And so they'll relocate them and they'll bring them back. But what happens also is there's the box that is there, and a lot of times someone may not know, is it working today or not?
That's why I think you should leave the box with no camera in it, because you'll still have traffic coming.
That's what happens a lot of times in terms of that. So you'll have people knowing, oh, this is an area where I got a ticket once before, let me slow down.
Right.
And so to the extent that there are a limited number of sites that we are actually deploying, on a daily basis, unless that's what the council is suggesting, that we increase the number, then we would be able to meet the various other communities. But last time I was here before you on it, there was a lot of resistance even to get us to the 36.
I know.
So if there's a desire to go higher, that's something that we can look at.
Well, and I just want to make myself clear. I truly want it to be about traffic calming, not grabbing the dollar. So if you leave an empty box and no one knows whether it's working, you get the same result, just not the cash. Thanks.
Any additional questions or comments? Okay. I guess we'll move right along, Mr. Dorsey, to another amendment, Resolution 112-18, the adoption of the debt policy.
Right. The county has a debt policy that addresses, some of the, levels of debt we'll have in place. What are some of the ratios we'll look at? One of the things that changed significantly from the last time we were before you was the change in the reserve, the Economic Stabilization Reserve account. Previously, it was at 5% in terms of what's in the law. Earlier this year, the council approved a recommendation from the administration to take that level to 10% and to not remain at a floor of 7% for more than 2 years. And so we're mainly bringing this to you to update that portion of the policy dealing with the reserve. There's one other item that I think the auditors may focus on. We had in the existing policy saying that generally we were going to do even debt principal payments. And then what we did this past year, as well as what we're saying will make clear modifying the debt policy, is that we could be talking about, thank you, about in terms of even debt levels. It's a slight increase in terms of for anytime we do it, from the level it would be from balanced principal to balanced payments. But that's something that we would be looking at year by year in terms of what makes sense at that given time in terms of the issuances, the debt issuance, the bond issuances for that particular year. But overall, as I said, the major issue here is in the terms of the change in the economic stabilization reserve account.
Councilman Quirk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dorsey, as we talked about before the work session started, where the county council is going to receive the Prague report, you said probably, hopefully Thursday?
Yes, sir.
Because, I mean, looking at the Prague report would be helpful. Now, when we look at level total payment structures, now from my understanding and also different illustrations, I mean, that definitely helps in the short term, but it also increases our cost over the long term, right?
It would, in terms of, for instance, if we were talking about the current assumption about 3% interest rate, if it was level principal, the total interest over the life of the bond may be $110 million. If you were looking at a level payment, the interest over that period would be $121 million. So it can be higher, but it's something, it's just one of the tools in your kit of how we issue debt, and when we issue debt, and facing budget constraints at any given time. And so this was one option that we have out there.
Do a lot of municipalities use this level total payment structure? Is this fairly standard in a lot
They
of
will do different things at different times. This is not that we are planning to make this a future-oriented kind of thing, that we will always do it this particular way. It's whatever is best for the county at that given point in time.
I have a question just as far as the time element of this. Is there any urgency to have to do this right away, or can we do this after the Spending Affordability Committee meets? We take a look at it. Any urgency as far as time?
There was no urgency at all.
So I just want to make sure we're communicating clearly, is if we held off on this until the Spending Affordability Committee could look at this, and that also we could really take a hard look at Prague, is there any downside to that from the administration standpoint?
There's no downside. We were just trying to get it before this council in terms of having an opportunity to vote on it. But this is a debt policy, in terms of the change in the law was several months ago.
Right.
So it's not that it would have an effect. We were just bringing it before you. And so if it didn't get decided today, it would not stop anything.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any additional questions? I do have one. So, say several months ago, we changed the policy.
The issue of the revenue stabilization reserve account, the amount that we put in there, that was back in the spring.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Dorsey. You've took up a lot of time. Yes, I'm sorry. Councilman Quirk?
Yeah, and that's why I definitely want to double check as well, Mr. Homan, to make sure that there's not a real urgent time constraint. I get the policy and I get the reasoning behind it. I just wanted to vet it out and just have the spending affordability work through with you guys. But I wanted to just double check that.
Any additional questions? Thank you again, Mr. Dorsey. Okay, let's move on to Mr. Will Anderson. Page 6, Bill 84-18. Tiger Grant.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the council.
Good afternoon, Mr. Anderson.
This is an appropriation for something we brought to you back in March. We were the applicant for a federal Tiger Grant, which are big infrastructure grants through the Federal Department of Transportation, working with Trade Point Atlantic as our partner. And excuse me, we waited to bring the appropriation until we got closer to finishing these grant agreements. It's literally taken 6 or 7 months to get these grant agreements put in place, which is normal for these big, complicated projects. And if you remember, this is $20 million coming from the federal government that comes to the county. We move that money on to Trade Point Atlantic to do a few things. One is to rebuild the bulkhead so that there's safer docking for vessels there. A second is rail improvements for the offload, and then a third is dredge. All told, it's over a $50 million project. So Trade Point is putting in over $30 million. Part of that $30 million is a fee they pay to the county. That's not in this appropriation, but you'll see it in a further appropriation that allows us for several years to administer watching the Tiger Grant, making sure it's all being built to spec, because that's a very specialized area of doing maritime development. So this $20 million appropriation will allow us, once the grant agreements get signed with the feds, to start moving the money and the construction on the port side to happen at Trade Point Atlantic.
Councilman Crandall?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Anderson, thank you and your staff. From what I understand, this has been a lot of hard work that's gone into this. I think that there are some things that we need to realize, and that is as the decline of Bethlehem Steel happened and I think it was five different companies in 10 years owned the site, a lot of this necessary infrastructure to move commodities around and to make it a viable port operation, those things were not invested in for a long time. So this is important to the future of the job growth at Trade Point Atlantic. And I think it should also be mentioned that this is a competitive federal grant process. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So the county and Trade Point Atlantic had to compete against other folks from around the country to gain this $20 million. And if it doesn't come to Baltimore County, it's going elsewhere. And I would certainly like to see it come to Baltimore County. Thanks again for your work on it.
Thank you.
Councilman
Yeah,
Marks?
I'll just echo a little bit of that. In my former life, I worked for the Department of Transportation.
Really?
Yeah, and these yes, and these discretionary grants, they don't have a lot of them anymore. They're
Councilman
restricted
Katz
to-
served in the General Assembly.
Who?
Councilman Katz.
Oh, Councilman Katz.
Just to remind everyone, because he's not here to do that.
Yes,
You
that's right.
don't. You don't say.
That's right. That's right. Although I wasn't there for 40 years, but anyway, it is a very highly competitive grant process, and you're competing with New York and New Jersey for regional transportation projects, and Seattle and Los Angeles. So it's a very big deal, and I think the county deserves some kudos for snagging this funding. Snagging it, yes.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you,
the
sir.
infrastructure may not be that exciting, but it's actually really a key to unlock the water rail roads that the site presents. So you're absolutely right. I mean, as they rebuild this, it really becomes a key part of the whole port operation in Greater Baltimore.
Councilman Quirk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for your your leadership and all the hard work you put into this, and I do hope our incoming county executive obviously keeps you on. You've done great work, and I definitely applaud your efforts. I think this might be one of the easiest things we vote on ever. Federal money, I'm like, please, federal government, give us all the money that you can, because we'd love to put it into infrastructure build out. And I mean, TradePoint is just exceptional. Anybody that hasn't been there, I just encourage you to go. We took a tour, went in the Amazon building, looked at the FedEx building. What's gone over there is just exceptionally transformative. So I'd like to just thank, TradePoint and Jim Davis and this big billionaire, thank God, loves Baltimore County and putting a lot of money into it. Because ultimately this is, billion, maybe $2 billion total investment. It's absolutely going to employ ultimately 10, 15,000 good jobs. And so I do appreciate all your work and just wanted to recognize you for what you've helped make happen. So
Thanks.
Thank you.
I mean, it's a project we want to have happen, but if you scurried around the county every day seeing how many people in budget and law and permits and development, I mean, there's a lot of people working on TradePoint Atlantic all over the place because we have mutual interests there.
Councilwoman Allman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that I had a tour not too long ago, and most of the tour was concerning the infrastructure, the dredging, the rail, and it was just fascinating to envision the vision that they have for TradePoint Atlantic, and quite frankly, that Baltimore County has for TradePoint Atlantic. So it's pretty incredible. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I do want to add that in case some of us may have missed it, TradePoint just announced that one of the best companies in Maryland, Purdue, is going to be doing, I guess not maybe the processing. Will, you know more about this than I do.
Yeah,
maybe,
about organic grain.
Organic grain,
Yep.
which is a commodity there, and that's just an example of the things that can happen. So more jobs coming to TradePoint with a company, a Maryland-based company like Purdue, which is a good thing.
Any additional questions? I guess wanted to echo what Councilman Quirk said. It's always good to get federal money. We better get as much as we can while they're still there. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Let's see. Wait a minute, Mr. Anderson. Let's make sure that's all for you. Yep, that's all for you. Thank you, sir. Next, we'll hear from the good Dr. Gregory Branch and move along to page 9, Bill 8518. Mental health services, exactly what I need.
Good afternoon, Chairman, and to the Council. The administration is requesting a supplemental appropriation of county funds totaling approximately $561,000 for mental health, and the funds will be used to expand the availability of the county's mobile crisis teams, which provides the on-site emergency mental health services throughout the county. This will allow us to do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So specifically, we'll be using the funds to add the third shift from 1 a.m. to 9:30 a.m., 7 days a week.
Well, we certainly appreciate that, Dr. Branch. Councilwoman Allman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hi.
Will any of the crisis team be available to any of our schools?
Okay, so what happens is the fact that we actually do work with the school system. The school system has their own infrastructure. So to a certain degree, usually when something emergent happens at school, the school system can usually handle it themselves. However, if something happens to one of our school-age children, especially after school hours and things like that, then our mobile crisis center would actually be there for them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Crandall?
Dr. Branch, this will be a segue into 8618, which I guess you're going to get to talk about next. Do we know to what extent the opioid crisis drives some of the need for the mental health crisis team?
Yes. So what happens is the fact that what we've recognized, and we'll get into that a little bit, but well over 10 years ago when I became the health officer, it was very, very clear that folks who have mental health issues also unfortunately suffer from a substance use disorder. And folks with substance use disorder also suffer from mental health. So it all goes completely together. And we have to deal with it completely together. So that's what happens, and we actually work with that when it comes to the our crisis intervention. And we also have our peer recovery specialists who are out there with the police and with fire, so that they go to someone's house. Let's just say somebody had an overdose. They call our peer recovery specialists at that particular hour, and they're able to go out and work with the person possibly. Many times the person doesn't want anything, but they work with the person's family and give them Narcan training and work with them to try to stop them from enabling that person. So we actually are starting to really combine a lot of this. And when we talk about the behavioral health, you'll understand what we're trying to do to bring it all together.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think this is really so important, especially in this day and age we're in, where we have a lot of unfortunate events, and it seems like one crisis after another in this country. Question, if, say, for example, there's some crisis going on in Baltimore County in the middle of the morning where this might be used, or late evening. Somebody calls 911. How does the 911 operator know, okay, this is the mobile crisis team we're going to send out versus this is a police officer we're going to send out? Or, I mean, I guess there's training involved that comes along with it.
Everything basically involves the police. So mobile crisis, irrespective of how much mental health is happening, the police have to maintain the safety and security of the situation. So when you have those types of major crises, the police are going to have to deal with that the way they have to deal with that to ensure that it's safe. Now, once they understand that it's safe, the police can then call in this unit, and then they're able to go out with the mental health provider to be able to kind of work with the person. So I think sometimes we get a little confused because we think of it as like hostage negotiation on TV, and it's not like that at all. Basically what happens is the fact that if the police feel that this is a safe enough environment, then they will actually bring in this particular team, the mobile crisis, to be able to deal with that particular issue at the particular time. So it actually really prevents a lot of people from going to the jail and going to the emergency room. So it's really a jail and ER diversion, and then it allows that we don't have to have too much, if not necessary, hands-on, right? So that's what it really prevents a lot of. Some things, though, even though it's dealing with mental health and substance abuse, sometimes the police just have to do what they have to do, period, point blank. And there is no really discussion and talking at that particular time because the crisis is way out of hand.
Well, Dr. Branch, I certainly appreciate the explanation. I would hope that, at some point we get to a point where we can try to intervene and assist, because in many cases, people with some of these mental disorders, they end up being harmed by the police just because they are not following directions and like a regular person would. But I certainly understand that, we have to have a safe environment. I just like to think that, this mobile crisis team could be used in some fashion to help calm some of these things down so that they don't get out of hand. Any additional questions or comments? All right, Dr. Branch, we'll move on to page 12, Bill 8618.
Well, I'm very excited about this one. This is the medication-assisted treatment capacity expansion. So the administration is requesting a supplemental appropriation of federal funds, over $500,000, so that we can actually expand our medication-assisted treatment predominantly in the Baltimore County Detention Center. So what's going to happen now is this. What we know is that when folks come out of institutions, specifically like Baltimore County Detention Center or any other detention center, the likelihood of them overdosing goes up sky high. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to prevent that. And so we got this money directly from the federal government, SAMHSA, and we had not gotten a SAMHSA grant in probably over 20 years, so I was so glad they gave us this grant. What happens is that if someone is at the detention center for at least a year, 4 months prior to their leaving, we actually introduce buprenorphine, which is a medication-assisted therapy for that person, and we let them stay on that buprenorphine while they're in the detention center. And then we help to now then get that person linked up to a community setting with the buprenorphine so that in fact it prevents them from overdosing. This is a major, major project within a detention center because buprenorphine is a medication that we consider to be what we call a partial agonist. So an agonist is something that's an opioid. An antagonist is something that, like naloxone, it just cuts it. This is a partial agonist, so therefore you have to make sure that it's not abused. And because we're dealing with that particular population, we have to ensure that we have additional nurses and correctional officers who are there while we're giving this medication. But I do believe that this particular program is going to save lives.
Any questions or comments? Okay, Dr. Branch, we'll move on to page 15, Bill 8718.
So this bill is one, Congressman Crandall, I think we were kind of starting to talk about, and that is Behavioral Health Advisory Council. So this bill would codify this advisory council. So over 10 years ago when I started with the health department, one of the things that I did within the department is we have a division of behavioral health. I combined the mental health with the substance abuse, and that's the way we've been dealing with it over 10 years. Subsequent to that, the state has done the same exact thing. What we've had by law is we had to have a mental health council and a substance abuse council. And what we've been doing for quite some time is we basically put them right at the same time. One is at 1 hour, and then the next hour is the next one, and it's the same people. So at this point now, what we're trying to do is basically have it to be one council. And so then we can deal with the mental health issues and the substance use issues for our jurisdiction at one meeting, as opposed to trying to deal with mental health at one meeting, close the meeting, open it up, and then try to deal with substance use issues, which doesn't really make any sense.
Sure.
Councilman Cranston.
Mr. Chair, sure. I just I want to go back to 8618, if I may, just for a second, and it fits in with with 8718 as well. So the drug that's administered, or will be, should the bill pass, I'm not going to try to pronounce it.
Buprenorphine.
Buprenorphine.
Yes.
Has there, to your knowledge, is there a treatment for opioid addiction that it doesn't involve an opioid?
Okay. So
so this has the morphine molecule in it.
Okay. So
right?
we're not going to say the morphine molecule, but I think I understand what you're saying. The gold standard for treatment of an opioid disorder is methadone. And methadone is a full-blown agonist. It is an opioid. It's just long-acting. The other drug that we actually have that we know works is buprenorphine. There's another drug called Vivitrol. I won't bring that drug in at this particular time. It's not as effective necessarily, but I'm not going to go there with that. So basically, the two treatment options that we have in medical-assisted therapy at this particular time is going to be methadone and buprenorphine. Buprenorphine is a medication that you put under the tongue, and it has to be absorbed sublingually. It has to go right into the blood system. If you swallow it, it is ineffective. And so that's why with this particular drug, what we have to do is we got to make sure that a person puts it under the tongue and that it's absorbed. So we actually make them keep their hands on their laps, or they have to sit on their hands. And then once they take the thing sublingually, we then make them drink water. They have to open their mouths for the correctional officer and drink water again to ensure that that actually has been dissolved. So what's happening now, the fact that many people are now on methadone and on buprenorphine. Substance abuse or substance use disorder is now considered a disease, like diabetes, high blood pressure, or anything else. And the only thing that we really have to treat them at this point now, the medications, is really methadone and buprenorphine. What is going to happen and what's coming down the pike is that when a person is arrested who's already on their medication for their disease, they're saying at this point now, I demand that you give it to me. And so we have to be on the cutting edge of this and on the forefront of this, because there are people who are coming in who are already on these medications, who they may come in for a completely different reason, but they're being treated for their substance use disorder. And to stop that medication, right, to put them into a whirlwind and potentially have the ramifications of that is something that we really don't want to happen in our jurisdiction. And so you can kind of see what's going on. And now there are two federal cases, one in Massachusetts, and inmates are now challenging the fact that you've got to give me my medication. And so at this point now, I was so glad that we were able to get this kind of a program started, because we're going to have to initiate it, because I can tell you down the line, we're going to have to treat substance use disorder in the detention center. That's coming. That's the reality situation. And it's different, as I mentioned to you. You just can't say, take this pill and walk away, right? It requires a lot more supervision of the medication and the administering of the medication, both from a medical side and from a correctional officer side. And that particular program, that $500,000 is paying for the nurses and the correctional officers to be able to give that medication.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilwoman Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Branch, I always find you so educational. I learn something every time you sit there. So I have your attention. Can you tell me what the difference is with the drug Suboxone? I hear about that a lot. I hear it's all cash, not really written by a medical doctor. Can you speak to me about that?
There's a lot of medications that we have out there, and different ones are agonists, partial agonists, and antagonists. So the Suboxone, the Subutex, the buprenorphine, all the same drug, different names.
Okay.
Okay, just to kind of give you a sense of what that is. So basically what happens is working the same exact way as the buprenorphine will work. But it's just different names and different brand names and things like that for the pills.
But is that covered by insurance?
Yes.
Okay.
So what happens, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but I think this is so important for you to understand. A physician, a prescriber, can write any opioid, save for methadone and buprenorphine. Buprenorphine, you have to have a special license to write for that.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, and then and once you get the special license, you're limited in the number of patients you can write that for.
That's good.
That has nothing to do with an opioid. So I can write OxyContin to 1 million patients, but I can only write the treatment buprenorphine for 50 patients the first year I become certified, and then 100 patients, some doctors 250, depending on what type of doctor they are, right? So we're limited. This patient population can be difficult, right? You can imagine that, especially if somebody is trying to they're waxing and waning at a particular time. It can be very difficult. So many providers prefer, if they do it, they only would like to have very few patients. So we have an issue in that I have a medication-assisted treatment that could help people who are substance users, but I have a limited number of doctors who are willing to actually write it and who are willing to actually deal with that population. So I have to now work with the docs to try to deal with them in the best way I can in our jurisdiction. One, to convince them to become a buprenorphine doctor. Two, once they become a buprenorphine doctor, maximize their patients. And then three, I have them, we call it a hub and spoke. We actually match a physician up with the larger programs. And when a patient is waxing and waning and not doing so well, the physician can move that patient to the larger program. So it's not having the doctor kind of spin his wheels or her wheels, the prescriber. And then once the patient is under better control, they can come back to that prescriber's office. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So we're trying to work with that, but it's very, very difficult because it's very, very limited. Mm-hmm. If you can imagine, right? So that's just the way it kind of works out. And you can't give methadone as a substance use disorder drug. You got to be in the methadone program.
Thank you for explaining that.
Okay, I'm going to just agree with Kathy Bevins. I certainly learn an awful lot every time I talk to you, Dr. Branch. We are very happy to have you. There's no question about it. I was thinking of the commercial where the guy who sells the Alan Elkin or whatever. He says, we live, sleep, eat, and breathe this stuff. I'm not saying you live, sleep. The subject matter you do, nothing else. Moving right along to page 39. Dr. Branch, contract with Laboratory Corporation of America Holdings.
All right, then. The administration is requesting approval of a contract with LabCorp, and this is basically to provide general laboratory service to county residents who are coming into our clinics for like HIV, planning, family planning, reproductive clinic, and tuberculosis. So it's just to pay for some of the testing that we do.
Any questions? Hearing none. Page 42, Dr. Branch.
So this goes back to the mobile crisis team. So first we were asking that we can actually put funds in for the mobile crisis team. Now what we're asking is for a BAT to reappropriate the funds from the Reserve for Contingency program into this program so that we can actually have the expansion.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, move on to page 45, another contract with Associated Catholic Charities.
Yeah, so Associated Catholic Charities took over another program from in the Dundalk area, and this is a program that we're trying to contract with Associated Catholic Charities to have an outpatient substance abuse treatment for adolescents. This is not for adults. These are for our adolescents, unfortunately, who are between the ages of 12 and 17 who have a substance use issue. These programs right here provide a lot of extra additional services and care coordination for these adolescents and children.
Any questions? Thank you very much for your time today, Dr. Branch. Okay. Have yourself a good day. Now we'll hear from Ms. Andrea Van Arsdale. This is page 18, Bill 88-18, Community Development Block Grant.
Good afternoon. The administration is requesting a supplemental appropriation of $1,085,545 to reflect an increase in funding of $473,006 in community development block grant funds and $612,539 in the Home Investment Partnership funds. These funds will be used to provide additional assistance to eligible programs such as mortgage assistance, housing counseling, and first-time homebuyer education, public service and capital grants to not-for-profits, single-family home rehabilitation grants, as well as associated administrative costs.
Any questions? Thank you very much, Ms. Van Arsdale. I'll say. You
Get
think,
going while
you
the
think,
going's
why
good.
didn't you go first? Ms. Joanne Williams.
Retirement coming up for someone?
Something wrong with, I'll have to look it up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the County Council,
Good afternoon.
and I'm sorry, I had two items here, so this is the contracts for the senior assisted living housing.
Yes.
Yes. The Department of Aging is requesting approval of two assisted living contracts. The Comforts of Home LLC and the Comforts of Home 2 for fiscal year 2019. And this program subsidizes assisted living expenses of Baltimore County residents 62 years of age or older who meets income and eligibility requirements. And the services provided include 24-hour, 7 days per week on-site supervision, 3 meals a day, evening snacks, personal services such as grooming, bathing and dressing, and housekeeping and laundry services.
Any questions? None? Go on to page 24, Bill 89-18.
Okay. This is a supplemental appropriation for the Senior Care Health Promotions Program. The Baltimore County Department of Aging is requesting approval of a supplemental appropriation of $93,674 for the Senior Care Health Promotion Program. This program is funded by the state Maryland Department of Aging, and it is intended to integrate health and wellness activities like pickleball into our existing senior center care program for all participants, especially those on the current waiting list. So the funds will be used to support a part-time person to help administer and manage the wellness programs and identify the clients who are eligible, and then again to provide follow-up to the clients to ensure that they have attended the programs identified.
Any questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Ms. Williams.
Thank you kindly.
There's,
Oh, just congratulations coming
Thank
up on
you.
your retirement.
Thank you. Yes, sir. The end of the year.
Congratulations. Thank you for
kindly.
everything.
It's been my pleasure to work with all of you. Thank you
where,
very
where,
much.
where are you going, Ms. Williams? I didn't know you're leaving.
Where am I going?
To a
Yeah.
beach.
Not far.
I know she won't
Have a
get her
plan, as we have, for years have advised all of our clients to have a plan. So I have a plan for family and friends, and it's just a good personal time for me to make that transition.
Good for you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Now we'll call upon Mr. Steve Walsh. Page 31, contract. Lee McBride.
It's not going to snow.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council,
Good
here with
afternoon,
another
Ms. Walsh.
contract for a vendor to help us with snow removal. Requesting approval of a contract with Lee McBride, doing business as emergency services, to provide on-call snow removal and salt application services. Contract commenced November 1st, would continue through April 30th of next year, and may not exceed $25,000 unless approved by the council. Contract would automatically renew for 9 additional years. Compensation for the contract, together with all other contracts for these services, may not exceed the amount appropriated for snow removal. during the entire term.
Any questions? Hearing none. Okay, Mr. Walsh, we'll move right along to Resolution 113-18, Baltimore County 10-year solid waste plan.
Yes. So Resolution 113-18 would adopt the 2019 to 2028 solid waste management plan for Baltimore County. Code of Maryland Regulations, Section 26.03.03, requires the county to adopt a plan which covers a period of 10 years. And simply put, this plan lays out what we currently do and lays out items of consideration for the future in dealing with the county's trash. Last plan was adopted through Resolution 101-08, and this plan meets state requirements and was developed with substantial citizen input and participation. 5 public discussion meetings were held at libraries throughout the county. Phone survey of 223 residents was done, and a solid waste management citizens review committee was formed to provide input. And a letter of support from that committee dated November 2nd may not be in your package, but we can certainly provide that to the council. And a formal public hearing was held on March 28th, 2018. So the final version of the plan, which you see in your packet, is the culmination of that public outreach effort and trying to balance the county's needs with the comments from the citizens. And MDE has already given tentative approval of the current document. And finally, I'd just like to mention the great work of solid waste staff, Mike and Charlie back there. We did this preparation of this plan in-house, and the only reason I mention that is an adjacent jurisdiction spent $500,000 putting their plan together through a consultant. So that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Walsh. Wait a minute.
And they are always among the most responsive folks in the county.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Tim Dunn.
Thank you very much. One brief comment.
Go
We
right
talk about the rain, 60 inches of rain. We'll think about what the landfill is. Basically, it's a constant active construction zone, and rain has really put an impact on the landfill. So it's a tough job. Guys do a great job.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Walsh.
Thank you.
Amy Grassi.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the council.
Good afternoon.
The administration is requesting approval of another contract at Lenore Court. This is 1703 Lenore Court. It is a repetitively flooded property, part of a project for acquiring houses all around Lenore Court. This is the third one. We've already been here with 1701 and 1700 Lenore Court. 1703 is owned by Dustin Wingfield. It appraised at $150,000. It's a third of an acre. The federal funds will cover $112,500, and county funds is $37,500. That's a 25% match required by the federal regulations, and that's pretty much it.
Any questions? Hearing none, thank you very much, Ms. Grassi.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from our fine county attorney, Mike Field. Contract with Baker, what's that,
Baker
Doan
Donaldson.
son?
All right. Thank you very much, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman and members of the council. The Office of Law is coming to you today to ask to allow us to hire outside counsel for the defense of a lawsuit you've probably heard about. The county, several police officers, current and former, were sued by 5 named plaintiffs, purporting also to represent a class of women who sued the people that I just named, as well as the Board of Regents of the University System of Maryland, UMBC Police Department, the state's attorney, and then again individuals including Chief Sheridan, Chief Johnson, President Hrabowski at UMBC, et cetera. The suit portrays the governmental units and the individuals as being indifferent to and failing to adequately investigate crimes of sexual violence committed against the named plaintiffs and the class of women they purport to represent. And they say that these alleged indifference resulted in a failure to investigate, and those constitute a violation of federal law and certain constitutional provisions. This is going to be a difficult and kind of expansive case. We decided that we really needed help from outside the Office of Law. We didn't have time, obviously, to bid this out like you normally would, to do an RFP or anything like that. What happens when you get served, and people have been served, although I'm not sure even all the defendants have been served yet, but we were served, several people were served a while ago, and initial responses are due pretty much now or very soon. So we asked around, and we settled on a pretty well-known national firm. Full name of it is, I have it here somewhere. They're known as Baker Donaldson. They are called Baker Donaldson, Behrman, Caldwell, and Berkowitz. You may know the Oberkaler firm from downtown. So the Oberkaler firm was absorbed by Baker Donaldson. So it is a sole source contract because there was really no time, obviously, to do an RFP for this. It's for an initial 2 years and then 4 one-year renewals. And we're just sort of starting down the road with this case. So we're hoping that you'll allow us to hire outside counsel to work with the Office of Law in this particular case.
Mr. Field, what do you see our liability here?
I'm not going to estimate it. I mean, remember, this is a federal civil rights case, so what happens is the prevailing party is also, and I'm not predicting, anything here, the prevailing party is also allowed to get attorney's fees, which can, in some cases actually be more than the damages. But this case is new. They may be. It's sort of hard to predict. I'm not going to give a number. I really can't. It would be irresponsible.
Well, the only reason I ask, I didn't want us to spend more litigating something than it would be to get settled it.
We're in the early going. I mean,
Any questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Field. Now we'll move on to some bills. Starting with page 27, Bill 90-18, Councilwoman Allman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This legislation has to do with Stevenson University taking over the Rosewood property, which has been in the works for, about 16 years. And this bill will help facilitate the rest of the process, having Stevenson take over the property. In most DR zones, schools are permitted by right, public schools. And according to Rosewood's community plan, Stevenson will be taking over all of the Rosewood property. And I'm asking that we have private colleges on properties recommended for designation for institutional education uses in a community plan adopted by this council. So I'm asking Rosewood to be able to, Stevenson to be able to take over the Rosewood property that is in a DR zone.
Any questions? Thank you, Councilwoman Allman.
Thank you.
You can move right on to page 28, Bill 91-18.
And this one I'm going to throw over to Mr. Bostwick. Thank you.
This is really a technical bill. As far as the Landmarks Preservation Commission and designation of historic structures, anything that was designated prior to 2005 generally had just the structure designated, and for the purposes of the state tax credit that is available to people who invest money to rehabilitate these structures, it was, I guess, ambiguous as to whether they would be entitled to the credit if not the structure and the property on which it was located was designated together. So the Landmarks Preservation Commission developed a process to delineate historic settings along with structures that had previously been designated. However, this particular one, Scott's Tavern House, Stone Outbuilding, and Log Outbuilding, this structure was designated in 2006, but it was nominated prior to this procedure that LPC adopted. So it's sort of in a little bit of limbo, and the council was asked to legislatively fix that by having this bill adopt the historic environmental setting for these buildings, and to go back retroactive to October of 2006, which was the original effective date of the bill that landmarked those buildings. So that is what this bill does.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? None? Page 30, Bill 92-18, Councilman Quirk and Marks. Marks?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Neighbor Space is a nonprofit that works to preserve green space within the urban-rural demarcation line. I think we're all very familiar with their excellent work. Under current statute, there's a 30% ceiling on the use of county open space waiver fees for operating costs. This bill increases the ceiling to 50%. However, I'd like to put an amendment in that eliminates the ceiling altogether. Neighbor Space will make the point that its most active period of acquisition is probably over, and that this would give it additional flexibility for maintenance and programming.
Councilman Quirk?
Yeah, I'd like to just add also, the original bill also requires Neighbor Space to file an annual report with the county auditor, so it's fully transparent. I mean, this is something that we all work together on. I know every council member here strongly supports more open space, especially inside the URDL where we need it. And so I know we do have two public speakers on this today. I know we have Barb Hopkins, who does a wonderful job leading the organization. We have Mike Weber, who does a great job with being the treasurer. And this is definitely these are the white hats, the white hat people that are making good policy and helping with good government programs. And a lot of times doing it on their own dime and doing a lot of this because they personally have a passion for what they're doing, because they could be doing a lot of other things. And so we just appreciate all your work, both of you, and your whole board. If you could just tell everybody in Neighbor Space, we really appreciate everything you do. We wish you great success and appreciate your work.
I
Mr. Chair.
have a question.
Never mind.
Councilman Crandall?
I just real quick before you get to your question, I just want to echo what my colleagues have said. I think we've all benefited in different ways in our own districts from the work of Neighbor Space, and I think some of my colleagues have heard me say this before, that this is an organization that is evolving because they've reached some of their goals, in fact most of their goals in terms of land acquisition, and now it's time to move on to other things, and this legislation would help that evolution.
Mr. Chairman, if I could say one thing,
Sure.
too. And I appreciate what Councilman Crandall has said as well, because a lot of the land that actually Neighbor Space acquires, much of it is actually donated as opposed to being bought. And so the capital requirements often are less, where the programming need that Neighbor Space has is often a lot more. And so I think the programming and the operational side of Neighbor Space can be so much more than what it is currently by helping move this along. And, we'll watch it every year. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll have the county auditors report, make sure it's going the way that we hope to see it go, we can always change it later if not. But I can say only good commendations from Neighbor Space, because they truly have been good stewards for what they're doing.
The only question I had from the sponsors was we go from 30% to 50. Seemed like a reasonable increase. And now you go from 50 to nothing in one fell swoop. Is it pretty fast.
Yeah, I think what we really, really need in Baltimore County is to update our whole open space policies. I mean, that's one of the issues we've, in the past, requested that we get new open space manual, dealing with really more, I mean, and Councilwoman Allman led a lot in this, really trying to figure this very complicated thing out, and still, there's still work that remains undone. And until then, I think this gives NeighborSpace the flexibility that they need, because we need to make sure too that the resources that are supposed to be there gets there and easy to track. And I think for now this gives them the flexibility. At the same time, we always have the county auditor's report. We always have the transparency. So because of that, and knowing their specific budget, I know Mike Weber can talk about this in much more detail. I think this gets NeighborSpace what they need, so they can continue to keep the talent necessary to do the programming that I think benefits all the citizens. But I'm sure they'll address it as well, but I appreciate the question.
Sure. Any additional comments?
I think there's a level of trust with the management of the organization, and there are sufficient checks and balances that we can have confidence they're going to use this money wisely.
Mr. Chair.
Okay. Yes, Councilwoman Allen.
I also think that we're going to see lots of changes moving forward, and we're going to see lots of programs moving into the future. And I think NeighborSpace, if any of our programs need to move into the future, it's you. And we trust you to do that and to use your resources wisely.
Okay. I'm going to save my next question for Ms. Hopkins. You want to come on up and... Sure, you can switch. Sure.
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Weber, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman and members of the council, I was here to make an argument for lifting the cap, so you've made that a bit easier for me, so I'll keep my remarks brief. To your comment about going from 30 to 50%, one of the points I want to make out is the traditional way of looking at nonprofits was how much are they spending in program expenses versus how much are they spending in overhead. And that's sort of an old way to look at it, and people for years have used that as a way to do an analysis of not-for-profits and whether they were meeting their goals. There's been really a change of thought on that, and one of the big the Bible of nonprofits called GuideStar has even changed their thinking on that. That says, by looking at it so critically, what you do is you rob the infrastructure of a not-for-profit and don't allow them to adequately invest in their own infrastructure to do the work that they need to do. No small business would go about doing the same thing, not invest in technology and people and education, and try to keep that low so they can spend money on other things. They would make sure that that foundation is proper. And that's really the thinking now in the not-for-profit world. That's especially important in small not-for-profits where the revenue dollars are small. If we need to do something to try to raise funds within NeighborSpace for $1,000, that's a big percentage of our operating budget compared to a not-for-profit that's $1 million or $2 million. So really what we're asking is that you look at what NeighborSpace does and monitor what we do. So we're happy to share our financials with you. We appreciate your trust, but we ask you to look at what we do because we value your input and want you to know the good work that we do. But that's a better way to do it than simply to monitor what we do based on a budget number and a certain percentage of our budget number. So you made my point easy. I certainly hope you will consider that, and we thank you for your time.
Sure. Mr. Weber, I guess that my question that I was going to ask was, you know, when we earmark certain amount of money towards the acquisition of property, then that money is used for acquiring property in terms of adding additional open space. And people that the source of the money comes from some developer who wants to build a development, and he or she does not want to add additional open space. They rather pay a fine, a fee, and they tell the county, you go somewhere else and find open space because I've made a calculation that I want to maximize the properties that I can build here and make money. So then that money, at some point, some of it comes to you, and I guess my fear would be that now all of a sudden there's no one to say to you, go out and buy more property, go out and find more property. The answer would be, well, now we can use all this money for programs, we can use all this money for salaries, we can use all this money for all these other things, and guess what? Now that we've invested in all these other things, we don't have any money to buy any additional properties. So then we're sort of stuck with what we have. And then you perform an audit and you say, well, these things are important and this is what we did. And I guess my point is whether or not this would change the direction of the organization.
I'll let our executive director handle that specific question. When it comes to spending money for properties, as Councilman Quirk pointed out, a lot of their properties are actually given to us. The problem is, as we acquire those properties, the administration of trying to make sure those properties are taken care of increases. The burden increases. And so, therefore, our operating costs increase every year that are just general administrative expenses. So we have sort of a catch-22 in that concern. So my answer to you would be we welcome monitoring our financials and what our goals are. It's perfectly available from our 990, from our financial statements, and from our statement every year of what our operations are going to be. So I think that to answer your question, I think we don't have a choice but to ask for the cap being lifted, but we certainly are cognizant of your concern, and I think the way to do that is to do an annual monitoring of where our dollars are spent.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Quirk?
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I can appreciate that question, and I definitely understand where it's coming from. I would just say, as Mr. Weber said as well, fortunately, we do have a lot of landowners that are donating these properties, and a lot of times that's how NeighborSpace even comes into the equation. But on top of that as well, we also have separate funding, mutually exclusive of NeighborSpace, of course, with the program Open Space. Lansdowne, for example, just got $400-some thousand to preserve a parcel of land that's going to just stay passive. So we have several tools in the arsenal. And I think when we do come into a property that might cost money for acquisition, I think that's when we go to Mr. Jabba and we go to the administration and really try to fight for program Open Space funds. Maybe that'd be separate from NeighborSpace, but I definitely understand your point.
Okay. Ms. Hopkins, you can make your way. Councilman Marks?
Yeah, just
thank you, Mr. Webb.
I'll echo what Councilman Quirk said. Many of these properties aren't bought; they're donated. A good example was Ridgely Manor Park. Quite frankly, it's the project I'm most proud of working on during my 7 years here, where the Hess Corporation purchased over a dozen homes that were contaminated, and we worked with NeighborSpace to make that a park. So a lot of these aren't bought. There's not a lot of money to do that. They are donated, and we're just trying to allow them to better maintain these properties.
Thank you, Councilman Marks.
Thank you, Mr.
Ms.
Chairman.
Hopkins?
Members of the council, Mr. Chairman, to get back to your question about, will we stop buying land? I think the past is a good predictor of the future, right? Perhaps the best predictor that there is in some cases, particularly if you have faith in an organization and in the people and the boards that are running them. And I will tell you that I started with NeighborSpace in 2009, and since that time, we have doubled the amount of property, the number of sites that we have. We've tripled the amount of acreage. We've done that receiving, for about 6 of those years, $25,000 a year from the county. And for 2 of those years, $35,000, right? In that same time, we've also opened 3 parks. We've substantially improved 3 of our properties, 2 with parks, 1 with a pedestrian ramp. And we did that using basically no county money. So I think what we're asking is, more than anything else, trust us. Let us invest in the good people that we have who are, right now, I think, getting a little burned out keep the good board members that we have, because I think they are doing the same thing. And we want to do more, right? Our plan is not to stop buying land. We just finished 4.5 years of work with the National Park Service on a really state-of-the-art mapping tool. Before we rolled it out to you and others formally, we wanted to have somebody else who's objective and knows a lot about GIS more than we do to evaluate it. And we were able to do that this summer. The Maryland Environmental Trust gave us a grant of $4,000, which we supplemented with $1,000 of our own money. And the Chesapeake Conservancy looked at our model and said, quote unquote, the insights gleaned from this model provide a comprehensive perspective towards conserving and prioritizing open space in Baltimore County. And so we have a tool that we're going to use basically to evaluate every vacant piece of land and every underutilized impervious surface parcel. And we're going to be able to rank them from highest to lowest based on this tool, which has GIS layers that were weighed by our constituents. And so we have those preferences in there. So we've got a great tool, all right? We're not going to stop going after land. But the first thing out of our mouth is not going to be, how much do you want to sell it for, right? Because we have a lot of other arrows in our quiver. We can say, would you like to donate this? We can give you a great tax break. If not, would you consider a bargain sale where, we pay a little bit of money and they take a tax deduction? So we're not stopping. We're just asking. We're not stopping buying land. We're just simply asking for some flexibility, understanding that, you have the right and we have the responsibility to come before you annually, and hopefully, more than that as we have projects in your district, but to really defend the decisions that we make, because we are cognizant that this is the citizens' money, and we want to be good stewards of it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Hopkins. I think we all are certainly appreciative of everything you and your organization has been doing. Any questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Well, whew. Looks like we made it. Looks like we made it, yes. We are done. That's it for today.
I really don't feel like
This is your last work session?
Is this work? Does this mean?
Oh, man.
How long?
We'll give you a cookie.
I
We
have
don't
an hour
have
and
a
a half
cake.
for this.
Huh? The 27th? No.
I mean, I don't have anything tonight.
Says you have your work session on the
But-
27th. Why she wasn't here for the meeting? Oh, the 27th? So